Hi everyone, I'm here with Margaret Kiernan. She is the head of publications at Drew University, and she's here to share some of her knowledge about graphic design, and we're going to hear a little bit about why she got into it, why she thinks it's important for you guys to learn some of this stuff. She's going to be helping us with the mini art school module that you guys are going to have to complete, and she's also going to take a look at your projects down the road and help you out with those as well. So I'm going to ask her a few questions. I'm behind the camera right now, so you're not going to see me, you're going to see her. And we're going to start with why, Margaret, did you get into graphic design?
Hi everyone. Well, I got into graphic design. I always enjoyed art in high school, obviously. I never really thought I was going to be going into art, but I did. When I was in school, my teachers encouraged me to do that. I ended up going to Montclair State College for about a year, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Art was one of them, but I also tried different subjects as well. But when I did find a class that I loved, the teacher said that, you know what, you really should go to School of Visual Arts in New York City, which is what I did. At that time, I had no idea what graphic design was. It was many years ago. I just knew about drawing and doing things like that. And when I went, there was no computers, there was no websites, there was no internet at all. There was just plain piece of paper and put art on there, and that was it. As I went to art school and I found out what graphic design was, I realized that graphic design is all around us, and it always has been. It's anything that has to do with type, an image, and putting that on paper or putting that up on a billboard or whatever. At the time, when I graduated, which was in 1986, it was just the first time that the Apple computer came out, which is a big tool that graphic designers use. And so everything that I did in school was pretty much done by hand. And like I said, there was no computers to do anything. But I loved graphic design. I since then have worked for education for the last 23 years, and it's been very good for me. I since then have learned how to use the computer, obviously, and have been pretty much have learned, used all the tools to put together mostly printed publications, but I've also worked on web design and some other type of media as well.
Okay, great. So how was the transition from paper to computer for you?
Well, it was good. It was definitely a positive thing to be able to work on a computer, going from doing everything by hand. When I used to do graphic design, I used to have to, in my mind, know what I was doing. And I think when I went to the computer, it was just a tool now. It was another tool that I was able to use to make setting type easier, being able to see things in front of me before it actually got to print, whereas when it was with print, you kind of just had to put it down and hope for the best when it came out from being printed. But with the computer, it definitely was something that helped to be able to use and be able to get messages around a lot better than in the past.
Did you have to take a course to learn how to use the computer, or was it just, your boss taught you, or how did that?
Well, actually, I acquired a computer when I was at Drew University, where I am right now. It was the first time, and I really didn't take a class. I kind of learned, believe it or not, because I think the best way to learn anything is by just continually going on to something, especially a new program, and just fooling around with it and trying to figure out what you can do and can't do with the tools that are given to you. And by doing that and having some background in design and knowing what I wanted to, how I visually wanted things to happen, I was able to take two things and kind of make them work. And then further along, I did take a couple of classes in some formal settings where I had like a day or a week training and things like that, so I can learn more about the different aspects of design work on the computer. So that helps a little bit as well.
Okay, great. So why do you think of learning these sorts of things, like what we're doing in our mini art module, our readings, why would learning graphic design be good for teachers?
I think that teachers, like in all professions really, there's always something that you have to communicate, whether it's to your student or to your parents or to other people that are your peers. And obviously, if you have a good sense of design and a good sense of knowing how to lay something out, whether it be on a wiki or a blog or a website or some type of presentation that you're doing, a PowerPoint, or even a printed piece of publications, it's good to have a good sense of how to present things, how to approach a blank, whether it's a screen or a piece of paper, and how to get your message across. So I think everybody, especially teachers, needs to be able to communicate that.
Great. So what are some of the basic things that you think educators should know about designing?
Well, I think that a lot of people, because they have either whether it's a pencil or a computer, and they have something that's printed or that's up there, they think, oh, it's printed, it's designed. But I think people have to realize that there's good design and bad design, and there's a good way to communicate and a bad way to communicate. And sometimes it's not always in black and white. It's not just in the book. I think if you read the book and you see the principles of what they're talking about, you get a sense of it. But then you have to really look at what you're doing, and you really have to think about, I think when you approach anything, and especially with the design, you have to think about, okay, first of all, before you even design it, well, what's the purpose of it? Why are you doing it? Who's your audience? What are the basic needs that you need to get across? And then you can communicate that message. Once you've thought about all those things, I think you need to put together all the different elements. I mean, if you want to communicate something, you have to say, do I need a visual with, whether it's photography, do I want a visual with type? And then you take the elements, which graphic design is basically taking type, taking words, taking, it can be animation if it's on the web, different things like that. And you need to gather those things together and then really kind of prioritize what the most important thing is. So at the beginning of your project or whatever you're communicating is, I try to think of things as tiers. And I think when you're starting a project, I'm going to just use an example of print because that's a lot of what I do. I think when you're going to like an opening page of a magazine spread, or if you're going to the opening page of a PowerPoint presentation, you really want to focus in on where's your eye going, where do you want the person that's looking at the piece of artwork, that I'm going to call it artwork, that you're creating, and where's it going? You want it to go to the most important place so that you know what you're talking about. So whether you do a big bold words or you start out with a really interesting picture and you put that up there, you want to grab their attention and you want them to focus directly on what the subject is. So I think that's like the first thing, just to really know, what you're communicating, what's the most important thing, and try to put that down. Then I think you take the elements of design where you say space, you think about, how do you place things on a page? What's important? One of the things that I think about all the time is a lot of times people might have a lot of things that they want to communicate, and they end up putting a lot of different pictures on a page, and they all seem to be all the same size. But then when the person looking at it is viewing it, they may not know where to go. So I think you kind of have to make a tier where what's important, and then kind of use that as a basis to start out with. I don't know if I've answered everything, but
no, that was good. Okay, so what are some common errors that non-graphic designers make?
Well, I think if anybody goes to any type of magazine or professional magazine, you see pretty good design, but there are some things that you'll just notice that the common person doing something, like they might not use white space. I mean, that's a big thing, and I know we talked about that in the book. White space could be a really important thing. I think that people are afraid that people sometimes want to use the entire page. They want to fill it up with every piece of part of the page that they can, whether it's on a website or a screen or a layout in a magazine or a book. But you have to realize that that white space gives people the importance to breathe and to you can utilize that space so that you can focus in on other things. A lot of other things that people do is sometimes when they do type, fonts are really important. The font that you choose for different things, it definitely gives a message of what you're trying to say. Some people try to get very decorative fonts, and they try to make things look maybe a little too pretty. But I think that you really have to think about who your audience is, and try not to make it look too decorative, too ornate. Those are some things. So fonts, space. I think sometimes people put too many, like I said before, they don't make a balance of photos, like or whatever the visual would be. You want to think of big and small. You want to think of where your eyes are moving on the page and things like that. And sometimes a lot of people put photographs down and then they put. I'm a big believer of having a lot of space around your photographs, so you don't always have tight crayons next to your picture. So again, it's a breathing, having space, and making it enjoyable to look at.
Okay, so you mentioned having white space on like a web page. Where is the white space on a website?
Well, the excuse me, the white space can be anywhere. I mean, it's kind of like if you're taking a blank page and the white space is what you start out with, and it's kind of like not using every single piece of that page for either type or for a font. However, it's not like you just want to have a big block of white space there. There has to be a reason for it. Maybe you'll have a nice type up on top, and rather than smushing the rest of the type right next to it, you want to give a little bit more space on the left, or up on the top, or around the edges, so that you don't have everything crammed out to the final. I think you think of the page of as framework too. You don't want to keep everything just so tight, so that your eye again can focus more on what you want to represent.
Okay, great.